do that. We want to have all the Hall of Famers that are here come up and sit in our Ring of Fame here. In 1979, Maxine Dilsaver Mellon, inducted in 1979. Gordon Banquet, inducted in 1983. Mark Jensen, inducted in 1987. Jody Bartman, 1988. Debbie Christensen, 1988. Mr. Mark Lewis, 1988. Our own Donna Stark, 1991. Melba Reed, 1994. Bill Stucco, 1994. I hope I didn't mess up too bad. Dale Frazier, 1996. Rick Steelsmith, 1998. Tommy Jensen, 2001. Gene Diller, 2002. Loretta Hoffman, 2004. Maggie Blecka, 2004. William Hand, 2006. Joel Newman, 2006. Millie Schrock, 2007. Mr. George Keane, 2007. Gary Armstrong, 2008. Cindy Vatican, 2009. Mr. Dennis Neal, 2009. There we go. Mr. Joe Rocco, 2010. Mr. Chad Murphy, 2010. Mr. Billy Murphy, 2010. Mr. Ronnie Walchek, 2010. Well, I'm sure everybody's glad to see me back up here again, so I was told I had 2 minutes. I might even do the Jimmy Galvano thing, Matt, so forget that. It is on rare occasion that a candidate is presented for induction into our Hall of Fame who is so supremely qualified for either the meritorious service category or the superior performance categories. This is indeed the case this year, as is with great pleasure that I enthusiastically present Mr. Rich Renollet for induction into the GPUSBC Association Hall of Fame for superior performance. Now, I was told when Donna asked me to present him that I only had 2 minutes to do this, so I'm going to try to stick with the program. The happiest person in the building about this is going to be Rich. Because Rich, I have a few things I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about underwater digital photography. Number 2, I am definitely not going to talk about co-ed pool table barroom defense in Springfield. And I think everybody's going to really appreciate the fact that I'm not going to talk about the 1984 White Castle incident in St. Louis, which earned Rich the nickname of Colon Boy. So Rich, you're spared this year. Obviously, Rich is well known to our bowling community. He's been the master of ceremonies of our annual awards banquet since 1998, having taken over and trying to fill the shoes of the legendary Waldo Lozier. As you're all aware, he's presided over this event, tonight included, very admirably, and has even managed to work in the same lousy jokes that Walt was able to work in every year. What you may not be aware of is the superior standard performance and involvement in all facets of the bowling industry that Rich has accomplished since arriving in the early 80s to bowl for Wichita State. Real quickly, I just want to run down a few of those, again, because we're kind of limited on time. But just on the lanes, Rich has been great. He's been tremendous competitor. He's had 3,300 games, including back-to-back 300s in the 1992 state tournament in Overland Park. He has 11 800 series with a high of 856. He's actually a 25 or I believe 26-year participant in the ABC USBC National Tournament. He was our 2003 GWBA Bowler of the Year. He's a 3-time All-Star champion, or All-Star team member. He's the 1995 Kansas Amateur champion. He was the 2010 KSBA State All-Bench champion. He was actually an assistant coach for WSU for 9 years, and I believe he presided over a couple of national championships there, helping Gordon out. And he's currently the director of the Smith Bowling and Recreation Center at the Radigan Center at WSU. As you can see, Rich more than exceeds our qualifications on just about every level. He's an ideal and well over their entry in the Hall of Fame. Without further delay, I present Rich Razzle.
Okay, well, thank you, George, for that colorful, somewhat too colorful introduction. When I found out 4 or 5 weeks ago that I was going to be inducted into this Hall of Fame, the first thought that popped into my head was, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to write one of those speeches. And you may not believe this, but after having been up here for 14 or 15 years emceeing this banquet, that made me quite nervous because there's been a few characters down here that I've sat out there and listened to who are pretty tough acts to follow, not the least of which was this one right here a couple 3 years ago. So it made me rather nervous. I thought, what in the world am I going to do? So what I decided to do was get on the phone, and I called my good friend in Texas, Chad Murphy, for a little bit of advice on how to do this. And I'm happy to say that Chad came through. Thank you, Chad. For those of you who may not have been here last year, there became a point in the evening we thought we might still be sitting here this year during Chad's acceptance speech. So now these boys, the ones that were inducted last year, all three of them, I am so privileged to call lifelong friends. Chad, Billy, and Lonnie, they grew up with me in the metropolis we know as Hutchinson, Kansas, and known them since they were kids and love them to death. So had to give Chad a hard time. I would like to begin by thanking the Great Plains USBC Hall of Fame Committee and all of the board of directors for selecting me for this honor. It really is overwhelming. Also want to offer special thanks to my buddy George Keene here for choosing to nominate me. I really appreciate that, George. Certainly what makes this so special is purely the company of folks, these people right here in front of me. Now normally they're facing out, which is a lot prettier, but anyway. What makes it so special is this company of folks that I'm so privileged to join in this Hall of Fame. I think of names like Delosier, Rainwater Boys, Oplinger, Walker, Bartman, Martin, Hand, Armstrong, Lewis, Keene, Rocco, both Wallacheks, Henning, Vatican, all three Lewises, Chappelle, Steelsmith, Detrani, Barnes, Rash, a whole herd of Jensens, and all the others of you who are in this Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel very honored to be joining your class, and I can't say enough about that. Also want to take this opportunity to congratulate my fellow inductees this evening, Darlene Poe, Sean Rash, and Paul Wallachek. I do need to take a moment to introduce some special guests who are here with me this evening. First and foremost, my parents certainly share in this honor, and they have joined us this evening. Please say hello to my mom and dad, Rod and Betty Renollet. Alongside my mom and dad is my best friend. She is my best friend, my best poker buddy, best golf buddy. If we ever get off our butts and get it done, we're going to get married one of these days. We'll let you know about that. But please welcome Anne-Marie Kurowski. And you've already met him, but I'm happy that that my boss and friend, I'm glad I can call him boss and friend, could join us at our table. So once again, for Jim and Carol. There are four folks who I wanted very badly to be here this evening who, I'm not going to blubber already, I'm just barely getting started, who I really wish could be here. My best friend, my other best friend, Ron Penner, and his wife Melanie, they, when I was called and said, who do you want at your table? I said, well, my mom and dad and Ron and Melanie, and they had previous plans prior to when we knew this was going to happen, and I know Ron wanted to be here very badly, but he means the world to me and wish he could be here, but that's just the way it goes. Also unable to be with us tonight are my two children, Connor and Aaron Renollet. They also had plans long ago made to go on a mini vacation with their mom this week, and it pains me greatly that they couldn't be here, but nonetheless, I know they're thinking of me, and I think of them every day. I get up and live and breathe every day for those two kids, and I wish they could be here. Of course, they're fine with it. I should say that, because let's see, go on vacation to fun places with mom or sit in a longboard bowling banquet with dad. So they're perfectly okay with it. At any rate, Ann, Mom, Dad, Jim, Carol, thank you for being here. Sport of bowling has given me way more than I ever believe I'll ever be able to give back. You know, I've won a few trophies, I've earned some nice paychecks as an amateur, seen many parts of the country that I probably wouldn't have otherwise visited. But way better than this, bowling's given me a career that I dearly love. Running a little place called the William H. Smith Bowling and Recreation Center. It's located on the Wichita State campus inside the Radigan Student Center. And it is, as we all know, the home of Shocker Bowling, and it's also a place for all Shockers to enjoy life on campus when our teams aren't practicing. Never would have dreamed, after being hired on January 2nd, 1986 by Coach Gordon Vatic, and then 25 years later I'd still be there as director of the center. Over the years, I've been privileged to work with many great teams of folks who are committed to one common goal of serving our university community. To all the folks who I've been privileged to work with over all those years, I thank you because you share in this honor as well. More on some of them later. Having said all of this, I'd have to say that the greatest gift that I've received in my involvement in this sport is the lifetime friendships and tons of wonderful memories, and even a few stories to tell, and I'm going to share one with you tonight. This goes back, goodness, over 20 years, believe it or not, and it involves one of my very best friends in the world, Kyle McCracken. Gordon, you probably already know where I'm going with this, but you probably can't believe I'm going to tell this story, but it goes back over 20 years. I was serving at the time as the assistant coach for the bowling program with working with Gordon. Kyle was actually a player in the program, but you have to understand, back at that time, I was the same age as all the players, so it was kind of a unique circumstance, and so I was friends and coach all at the same time. And you also have to understand that was about 50 or 60 pounds ago for me. And at the time, I was just starting to put on a little bit of weight, and I decided that I was going to use the Slim Fast method to lose a little bit of weight. And you know the drill. It's a shake in the morning, a shake at lunch, and a sensible dinner. And so I started doing this stuff, and at any rate, I soon realized that Slim Fast had a significant and pronounced effect on me, biologically speaking. George alluded to that earlier just a little bit, I think. So, to put it bluntly, it made me just a little bit gassy, and I don't know what they put in that. I don't know what they put in that stuff, but it was unbelievable. Let me just tell you. Now, I should say that it was a fun kind of gassing, you know, a lot of noise but no real after effects. As a 20-something-year-old male, this certainly was a weapon that held a lot of potential. So I shared this little tidbit of information with my friend Kyle, who came up with this bright idea right prior to one of our bowling team trips to Denver, Colorado, which involved a 12-hour van ride, leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning. Kyle comes to me and he says, "Hey Rich," he says, "what do you think would happen if the night before our trip to Denver, we ran to Taco Bell and loaded up on a whole bunch of burritos and then chased it with a bunch of Slim Fast?" How sweet it is when a plan comes together. So around 10:30, the night before our trip to Denver, Kyle and I proceeded to our neighborhood Taco Bell, where we each consumed about a half a dozen combo burritos. And we allowed those to sit in our bellies overnight, and upon waking for the trip the next morning, we each guzzled down as much Slim Fast as we could possibly handle, and we headed to campus. About 2 hours into the trip, our toxic diet began to work, and those unfortunate souls who were in our van would tell you that all hell broke loose. One of those unsuspecting individuals is wearing a red shirt, and he's sitting right in the middle here. His name's Rick Steelsmith. To this day, you bring the story up, he gets so mad his face still turns red. It was that bad. And if that wasn't bad enough, he was kind enough to be going with us. This was after his college career was over. Rick was kind enough to be going with us as a volunteer, non-paid, as a volunteer. And well, his reward was 12 hours of pure hell. So. You can call that a gift if you like. If there was a Hall of Fame for that, I'd probably be in it. So. Oh, goodness. Okay, that's the only story I want to tell. I do have a ton of other fond memories that I'm just going to list off very briefly with you that have just made this such a wonderful, wonderful experience over all these years for me. And they include, in no particular order, all 25 of my trips to the ABC and USBC national tournaments. I've gone to many fun places, and some not so fun. And bowled with many terrific people over all those years. Certainly helping coach during the 1987 and 1990 national championships, 1987 men's, 1990 women's national championship victories at WSU rank high on the list. I have to say, in both cases, it was more like being a cheerleader than a coach. These guys and gals are so talented, and they deserve really all the credit. But it was an easy job, and I'm grateful to have been a part of it. Bowling the family twosome as a child with my grandma. I knew that one would get me. Annabelle Renollet. More on her later too, if I don't blubber. Having the privilege of playing several seasons with the Children team. So lucky to have been able to play alongside Alexa Gordon, both Marks, Bob and Kyle. Some of the best years of my life. Seeing my friend Rick Steelsmith win the Masters as an amateur back in 1987, who was in Niagara Falls. One of my roommates at the time was Doug Crawford. Many of you may remember Doug. And Doug was actually Rick's backer for the tournament, so he was just as happy as Rick was when this thing was over. We threw one heck of a party at our house when Rick returned from Niagara Falls after his win. And since then, just seeing all of the former Shocker bowlers and our local folks compete on the pro tours, man, it's just been fun following the scores week after week, and what a thrill that has been. Another fond memory is losing the better part of a paycheck playing blackjack, acey-deucey, blood and guts, and other silly poker games with James Hall, who's sitting in the back of the room, and a few others while we were stranded for 7 days in Albuquerque, New Mexico, when a school band broke down on a return trip from Las Vegas. We broke down on Saturday, got the van into the shop on Monday, and left the following Saturday, so we were stranded there. I I was probably 20 or 21 years old. Like I said, I'm coaching people who are the same age as me. When I was 20, 21 years old, pretty wet behind the ears and in charge. So that was scary to think about. I think I missed one there. Oh yeah, competing in the 1989 Masters here at Century 2, and just by dumb luck, coming down the aisle shoulder to shoulder with my boyhood idol, Earl Anthony, that was a thrill for me. That, by the way, did not result in one of the paychecks, but it was a thrill nonetheless. Later on, I got to meet Earl at a World Team Challenge event in Kansas City, and we stood around on the concourse and we told jokes back and forth. He was genuinely a funny guy, so definitely a thrill. Professionally speaking, I've been privileged to know many first-generation bowling business people, proprietors and others in the bowling business. And I'm talking about people like John Crum, Nadine Oplinger, Dale Frazier, Chuck Hardman, all of these people who built their businesses from the ground up. And they probably don't know this, but I've learned a ton just by being around those folks and listening to their stories. And for those of you that are still around, thank you all for that. I know Dale's here tonight, so thank you so much. And then it's fun now seeing your kids take over your businesses and run with them. So that's been a real thrill for me. Bowling the 1997 ABC tournament in Huntsville, Alabama, on the same squad that the great Dick Weber did as he competed in his 50th consecutive national tournament, and having Dick stand in our picture that we took with the Chilton team, our team picture, was another thrill. 1995, I was lucky enough to advance to the Team USA National Finals in Reno, and at one of the banquets I got to sit next to the great Joe Norris, and Joe spent the whole evening talking to me in detail about his experiences taking a boat across the pond to Germany to compete in Olympic exhibitions during the 1936 Olympic Games, and that was a rare treat for me. Probably on the lanes, my greatest thrill was a close call that I had at the Super Bowl High Roller back in 2000. 1,960 players started that tournament. I made the final four, ended up finishing third. But the neater thing about that is had I won that match that I lost in the Final Four, I would have ended up playing against a former Shocker and a good friend of mine, Brad Kazuski, for the title and a $100,000 first prize. And the thing that is neat about that is Brad went on to win, and that certainly cushioned the blow of that near miss. But even with this, you can probably tell that most of my memories are centered around the people I've met, the friends I've made, rather than the accomplishments. I've been extremely lucky. Water break. George says, drink right out of it. This isn't the Springfield pool.
You're lucky it's not here.
You know, for every Hall of Fame inductee, there's normally a long list of folks that get to share in what is often viewed as an individual honor. The fact is, it's never, ever an individual honor. Never. Because nothing truly great is ever accomplished alone. Those who have had an impact on my life and who share in this honor include the following folks. Got the tough one first. Roy and Annabelle Renollet. I started bowling for one reason. No one raised no me. My grandma and grandpa played, and if they played, it must be pretty cool. You know, every chance I got, I would go to league with them at the Sterling Bowl in Sterling, Kansas, a little town up in Rice County, about an hour away from here. And I think to this day, that's probably why I have such an affection and passion for small town bowling centers. Not many of you probably know that about me, but these little places are treasures in their community, and I'm very passionate about that, and I think it all started there. You know, while most kids would be playing pinball or messing around on the pool table, I'd be sitting behind Grandma and Grandpa watching them intently, and then later on I'd go and try to emulate their styles. They were not great bowlers, but they certainly were great people. My grandma taught me what it means to treat everyone you come in contact with loving kindness. That's just how she was. And as for Grandpa, he taught me a no-nonsense approach to life. He really did. Mom and Dad, you know that. Along with a few four-letter words that I heard while hanging out in the shop as he worked on cars. He was a self-employed repair technician, worked on cars and small engines and all of that. And he invented a few strings of words, I think, on some of those occasions. But at any rate, he was not one to put up with a lot of BS, but he was a fair and honest man to the very end. They were model grandparents who left us about 18 years ago. And I'm forever grateful to them. Certainly, my maternal grandparents, Buster and Ola White, were also very supportive and took much, much pride in my bowling endeavors as a kid and into my adult years. They were terrific grandparents too, and I miss all four of them very much. Okay. Mom and Dad. You guys have been everything a good parent should be. You supported your kids in good times and bad, and you know, like any family, at one time or another, all four of us, my three siblings and I, have been a pain in the butt. And I know that may surprise some of you, but we have. And, well, at least three of the four of us. I keep waiting on Mary to screw up, and she just never seems to get it done. I have this one sister who just is perfect, and anyway, we love her very much, and I don't think that's going to happen. I remember as a kid, my dad bowled Thursday nights at Countryside Lanes in Hutchinson, and you know, I'm sure he would have dearly loved to have a night out with the men, but there was not any leaving this kid at home. And I went with him every week, and I even landed a scorekeeping job with some of the ladies bowling in the Thursday night league down the way. And now I get to be one of those old farts up here, because those you young people, you probably don't remember when you had to keep your own score. But anyway, editorial comment there. And so I'd go with Dad every Thursday night, and in spite of the fact he probably wanted to go out with the boys, I always got to go with him. And Dad, I appreciate that. And that reminds me of a little story. Back in those days, Countryside Lanes really was, I think, one of the premier bowling centers in the state of Kansas. It was managed at the time none other than by our own Paul Wolochek. The proprietor was Paul's father-in-law, Jeannie's dad, Lowell Pig, and it was a first-class operation all the way. And I remember one day, Paul, you may not even remember this, but I remember when my dad finally decided he was going to take up the game. Something that you should know about my dad is he was born with a little birth defect. And no, there's not going to be a punchline to this. It's a true story. He was born with a little birth defect. He doesn't have a thumb on either hand. He was born without thumbs. And so most of you are probably thinking, well, he's probably one of the first generation two-fingered bowlers, right? Well, no, not so, because aside from having no thumbs, he has all the flexibility and limberness of a 2x4. So you really can't do that two-finger thing without being able to cup your wrist and do all that kind of stuff. And besides that, being that way from birth, he just used this as his thumb. His index finger is his thumb. And I mean, the guy can shuffle cards and turn on the garden hose and do all this stuff. Imagine everything you do like this, having to do like this. So he walks into Paul at the pro shop at Countryside Lanes and says, I want to start bowling, drill me a ball. And so and I was just a kid, and I still remember the look on his face, on Paul's face, about, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? And so they went to work, and after a little head scratching, Dad walked out of there with a brand new shiny Brunswick Black Beauty and started bowling league on Thursday night. So fond memory of mine. Anyway, that's a sidebar. Back to the story. I'd go with Dad to bowl on Thursday nights, and on Saturday mornings, this kid who had to be pried out of bed with a forklift on school days was up before the crack of dawn and ready to go to 9 o'clock junior league. One particular Saturday, I got up, and of course I was up literally before dawn, and I got up, and pretty soon Mom comes walking in and informs me that she had awoke with a horrible migraine headache. And she told me, she said, son, I don't think I'm going to be able to take you to league. I just physically can't do it. And of course, me being a snot-nosed, little selfish brat of a kid, didn't really care that Mom had a migraine. We had to get to bowling, and so, I mean, after all, some dark being sick on Saturday morning. And so after I pitched a fit, Mom finally gave in. We got in the car, headed to the bowling center. We made it about halfway, and she begins to throw up in her lap. I mean, unbelievable. So she cleaned herself up and went to the bowling center, and Rich got to bowl. So Mom and Dad, I want to thank you very much for a lifetime of love and support, and again, a big part of this is yours, and I thank you so much. My teammates through the years, I've been so lucky to have a whole bunch of people that I've been able to call teammates, whether it be in league or tournament. I already mentioned the Chilton group: Kyle McCracken, Gordon, Mark, Bob, Mark Lewis, Mark Jensen, that bunch. Through the years, there have been many others, including Ron Penner, George Thomas, Ray Terry, Bert Elliott, Chad Murphy, Keith Rainey, many, many more. Been lucky to bowl with a whole bunch of folks. Now that I think about it, I guess I've gotten to play with so many different folks because no one can keep me around can't stand to keep me around that long. But nonetheless, I'm truly blessed, and these people who I've played the game with are a big reason why I'm still in it. And honest to God, it's about the people. My work team at WSU, I'm very privileged to work with an outstanding team of directors out at the Radigan Student Center. And without naming names, I work with a bunch of folks who run a college bookstore and campus food service, direct student activities events, as well as a bunch of support folks who take care of accounting and finance and building maintenance and IT and room reservations. And in addition to these, there's a team of folks who work for and with me and the Smith Bowling and Recreation Center. And I'm blessed with a very dedicated staff of folks who work hard every day. It's all of these folks have in their own way allowed me to continue to play in the sport that I love. So I'm also very excited to be working with them, especially now as we take our student union into the future with something called the Radigan Renewal Project. And this is a multi-million-dollar expansion and renovation that includes the addition of about 60,000 square feet to our building and a top-to-bottom facelift for the 52-year-old facility. And when it's complete, it's going to be a real showpiece for our university and a great place for students and staff to gather. By the way, if any of you have a few extra bucks laying around and would like to have a room named after you, or even a bowling lane, we'll even name a lane after you, I'm sure we can make that happen. So, I've had some really gifted bosses that I've worked for throughout the years. And I've always worked in a way that, I look at my boss and say, what can I learn from them? Because they've been doing this longer than me. They include people like Paul Wallachek. I worked for Paul for just a couple of years at Sky Bowl before heading off to WSU. And Paul, in just 2 short years, taught me what it truly means to be committed to a customer. When you work in the service business, you have to have a nonstop focus on the customer to be truly successful, and nobody knows that better than Paul Wallachek. He is a great friend. It's an honor to call him friend, and he's so deserving of the honor that he's going to get up here as soon as, if I ever get off the stage. Bill Smith. Bill was the director of the Campus Activities Center, now Radigan Student Center, when I began as an assistant to Gordon 25 years ago. And he was my direct boss for a lot of those years after I began running the center back in the middle 90s. Bill was a terrific supporter of the bowling program at Wichita State and was not afraid to venture into new territories. He's the first person ever to allow for a full-time bowling coach at a university. This decision was made about 16, 17 years ago and is what allowed me to take the job that I currently have. He taught me what it means to have high standards all the time, strive to do the best job you can do all the time, never settle for halfway. So I'm very appreciative to Bill. Jim Herman is my current boss out at the university, and as I said earlier, he's Associate Vice President for Campus Life and University Relations and the Director of our Radigan Student Center. Jim took that role about 3 years ago when Bill retired, and just let me say it's been an eventful 3 years. We've developed a mission statement, implemented strategic plans, and now have embarked on this renovation and expansion project, and I can't think of anyone better to oversee that than Jim. Jim, you've given me a new appreciation for what can be accomplished when you work as a team. everything we have done and everything we will do as long as Jim's in the driver's seat is decided on not so much by Jim, but by our director team under Jim's leadership. He really pulls people in and makes team decisions. It's been a lot of fun for me going through those processes, Jim, and I thank you for that team approach that you take in leading us. Finally, there's Gordon Vatican. Gordon, I saved you for last. I would have to say that aside from my family, no person has had a greater influence on my life than Gordon. I've worked with him for 25 years, and now he's like family to me. Having hired me in a full-time capacity when I was just 19 years old, Gordon set out on a mission to develop me for success, both personally and professionally. I've screwed up plenty along the ways, don't get me wrong, but that was me. I've always been able to go to Gordon for advice. He's taught me so many things I wouldn't even know how to begin to describe them. It's no secret that Gordon Vatican knows team play as much as anybody on the planet. He genuinely cares about, or the genuine care that he shows toward those who either work for him or play on his teams is indescribable and amazing. I can't begin to describe it. I'll give you an example. Right after our tournament, the women won in 1990, you typically get a championship ring. And shortly after that, after I had my ring, within a year, I went into our men's room to wash my hands, probably because I've been working on a pin setter. We have to do that in 8-lane centers too. And took my ring off, laid it on the sink, washed my hands, turned around, walked out and left the thing laying there. And realized 5 minutes later it was that I had left it in there. I went running back in and it was gone. I couldn't believe it, it was gone. And I was distraught, and of course I told Gordon what had happened. A few months later I had a birthday, and on my birthday he walks in with a little box in his hand, and it was this thing right here. I'm too fat to wear it now, but it was a brand new gold championship ring that he had specially made and paid for out of his own pocket. And it's just the kind of guy he is with people that he works with. So, Gordon, I just want to thank you for your mentoring, your friendship through all these years, as well as placing so much faith in me when I was nothing but a kid. Thank you very much. Finally, yes, there is an end. Finally, thank you again to the love of my life, Anne Marie. Being a bowler herself, and she's a 300 shooter too, by the way. She understands and appreciates what it means to play this game at a high level. And more than that, life off the lanes is so much fun with her. What guy wouldn't want to have a gal whose favorite pastimes include golf, poker, traveling to places with blue water and stuff like that. So, and I'm very lucky to have you in my life, and thank you for your love and support. And that's really about it, folks. So in closing, I want to once again thank George Keene and the Hall of Fame Committee and the Great Plains USBC for this wonderful honor. Thanks so much.